Princess Alindra stood at the tall window of her chamber and looked out at the crystal towers of Valoria that stretched toward the purple sky like frozen. Music made solid. She was beautiful in the way her people were beautiful, tall and thin, with bones like glass and skin that glowed with soft inner light like a lantern made of living starlight. Valorians were an ancient race, known across the galaxy for their art and their wisdom and their ability to speak mind to mind without words, but they were also known for something else. They were fragile. Fall that would bruise a human could shatter a Valoriana. Blow that would stun most species could kill them. This was why Princess Alindra, the only daughter of High Sovereign Maldois, was considered the most precious and most vulnerable treasure in all the known stars. And this was why her father had spent the last years searching for someone to protect her. Alindra turned away from the window when she heard the door chime. Her father entered with his long robes flowing behind him and his many eyes glittering with that look he always had when he had made a decision that others would not understand. "It is done," he said in his deep rumbling voice that echoed in her mind as well as her ears. "You have chosen my guardian?" Alindra asked. "I have." "Which species won your favor? The Krethon with their poison blood? The Morvathat with their mind blades? Surely not the Aldrani. They are too slow despite their strength." Her father smiled in that strange way of his that meant he was about to surprise her. "None of them," he said. "I have chosen a human." Alindra felt confusion flood through her like cold water. "A human?" she repeated. "Father, the humans they are barely known to us. They come from a small world at the edge of the spiral arm. They have no advanced technology, no psychic abilities, no natural weapons. They are soft and short-lived and utterly ordinary. That is what the galaxy believes," her father said. "But I have studied them. Daughter, I have watched the records from their world. I have seen what they are capable of. And I tell you now, there is nothing ordinary about the humans." Before Alindra could argue further, her father gestured toward the door. "Come and meet him." The human was waiting in the great hall. He was smaller than Alindra had expected, shorter than her by half a head, with brown skin and dark hair cut close to his skull and eyes the color of wet earth after rain. He wore simple clothes in dark colors and carried no visible weapons except for a knife at his belt and a small metal device she assumed was some kind of primitive projectile weapon. He looked old by human standards. There were lines on his face and gray in his hair, but he stood straight and still with a quietness that reminded Alindra of deep water. "Princess Alindra," her father said, "this is Commander Marcus Cole of Earth. He will be your guardian from this day forward." The human bowed his head slightly in a gesture of respect, but his eyes never left her face. "Your Highness," he said, and his voice was rough and warm like stones heated by the sun. Alindra did not know what to say around them. The courtiers whispered behind their hands, and she could feel their mockery and confusion pressing against her mind like cold fingers. They thought her father had gone mad. They thought this small, soft creature could not possibly protect the heir to the sovereignty. Looking at Marcus Cole, Alindra was not sure they were wrong. The first days were strange. Marcus followed her everywhere like a shadow, silent and watchful and always present. Slept outside her door on a simple mat. Even though she offered him a proper room, he ate little and spoke less. He studied every corridor and every door and every face in the palace with eyes that seemed to miss nothing. The courtiers laughed at him behind his back. The other guards looked at him with contempt. Even the servants seemed to pity this strange small creature who had been given an impossible task. But Alindra began to notice things. She noticed how Marcus could stand completely still for hours without moving or growing tired. She noticed how he could hear footsteps from 3 corridors away and identify who was coming by the sound alone. She noticed how his eyes tracked every movement in a room, even while he seemed to be looking at nothing. She noticed how the palace cats, small fierce creatures that hissed at everyone, would come and sit at his feet as if they recognized something in him that others could not see on the seventh day. She asked him a question that had been growing in her mind. "Commander Cole, why did you accept this position? You are far from your home world, surrounded by species who mock you. Asked to protect someone you do not know. Surely you had better options." Marcus looked at her with those dark, steady eyes. "I had many options, Your Highness," he said, "but none of them mattered as much as this one." "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment. "On my world," he said finally, "we have a long history of violence. We have fought each other for land and food and ideas and pride. We have done terrible things in the name of survival. But we have also done something else. We have learned to protect what matters, to guard the weak, to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. This is what my people do. Your Highness, we fight, yes, but we also protect. And when your father asked me to protect you, I saw in his eyes that you were worth protecting." Alindra felt something shift inside her chest. "You do not know me," she said softly. "Not yet," Marcus agreed. "But I will, and until I do, I will guard you with my life, because that is the promise I made. And humans, we keep our promises." That night, Alindra lay awake thinking about the strange creature sleeping outside her door. She thought about his quiet voice and his steady eyes and the way he had spoken of protection like it was something sacred. She thought about what her father had said, that there was nothing ordinary about the humans, and she began to wonder if perhaps her father was. Right outside her door, Marcus sat with his back against the wall and his knife across his knees. He was listening to the palace breathe around him, every creak and whisper and distant footstep catalogued and remembered. He was thinking about the princess with her light-filled skin and her ancient sad eyes. He was thinking about all the ways someone might try to kill her, and he was making a silent promise to himself. No one would harm her, not while he still drew breath, not ever. The first assassination attempt came on a quiet morning when the suns were just rising over the crystal towers. Alindra was walking through the garden with Marcus 2 steps behind her. As always, the flowers of Valoria were singing their morning songs, soft chiming sounds that filled the air with peace. Neither of them saw the assassin hiding in the branches of the silver tree. Dart flew through the air in complete silence. Marcus did not think. He simply moved. One moment he was behind the princess, and the next moment he was in front of her, and the dart was buried deep in his chest instead of hers. The poison hit his blood like liquid fire, and his legs stopped working, and his vision went dark at the edges, but he did not fall. He turned toward the tree and saw the assassin, a Crethon with acid green skin and compound eyes, dropping from the branches with a blade in each hand. The vase. Crethon was fast. Marcus was faster. Even with the poison burning through his veins, he caught the first blade with his bare hand and felt it cut deep into his palm. He used that grip to pull the assassin close. He wrapped his other arm around the creature's neck, and then he twisted. The crack was very loud in the quiet garden. The Crethon dropped. Marcus stood over the body, swaying on his feet with blood running down his arm and the dart still in his chest. "Your Highness," he said in a voice that was barely a whisper. "Are you hurt?" Alindra stared at him with wide, glowing eyes. "No," she breathed. "No, I am not hurt, but you, Marcus, you are." He tried to nod, but his body had finally decided it was done cooperating. He collapsed at her feet and did not move again for 3 days. When he woke up in the medical wing, the first thing he said was her name. The doctors told him he should be dead. Poison was designed to kill in seconds, and there was enough of it in his blood to kill a dozen Valorians. But humans, it seemed, were harder to kill than anyone had expected. Marcus was back at his post within a week. The second attempt was more subtle. It came not from outside the palace, but from within. A carefully planned attack that used the changing of the guard shifts to create a window of vulnerability. But Marcus had noticed something strange about the rotation patterns. He had mentioned it to no one because he was not entirely sure yet. Instead, he simply stopped sleeping. For 6 days and nights, he stayed awake, watching and waiting and drinking the bitter black liquid that humans called coffee, which the palace cooks had learned to make for him. On the 7th night, they came. 12 assassins moving through the service corridors in perfect silence. They were professionals, trained killers from a dozen different worlds working together with flawless coordination. They did not expect to find anyone waiting for the Marcus. Was waiting in the darkness with nothing but his knife and his patience. The fight was short and brutal. The palace guards found him in the morning sitting against the wall surrounded by 12 bodies. He looked up at them with exhausted eyes. Someone should probably clean this up, he said. And if it is not too much trouble, I could really use more coffee. The courtiers stopped laughing at him after that. Third attempt was the worst because it came from someone the princess trusted. Lord Valeth had served the sovereignty. For 200 years, he had been a friend to Alindra's mother before she died. He had watched Alindra grow from a child into a woman, and he had been compromised by the Sharath hegemony, the sovereignty's oldest and most dangerous enemy. Marcus knew something was wrong before he knew what it was. It was a feeling, a prickling at the back of his neck that he had learned to trust during his years of war on Earth. He watched Lord Valeth carefully. Without seeming to watch, he noticed small things. The way the old lord's eyes would flicker toward the princess with something that was not quite affection. The way his hands trembled slightly when he thought no one was looking. The way he had begun avoiding certain topics of conversation. Marcus said nothing to anyone. He simply waited. Attack came during the evening meal. Lord Valeth was pouring the princess her nightly cup of nectar, a sweet golden drink that Valorians consumed to maintain their energy. Marcus saw the old lord's hand pass over the cup. He saw the tiny flash of something dropping from his sleeve, and then Marcus was there. His hand locked around Lord Valeth's wrist in a grip that would not release. I would not drink that, Your Highness, he said quietly. The silence in the dining hall was absolute. Lord Valeth tried to pull free, but Marcus held him easily, despite the size difference between them. This is an outrage, the old lord sputtered. How dare you touch me? I am a member of the High Council. I have served this house for 2 centuries. And now you serve the hegemony, Marcus said. The poison in that cup, it is Sharath design, is it not? Slow acting, undetectable, perfect for making a death look natural. Lord Valeth's face went pale in his eyes. Alindra could see the truth. Why? She whispered, and her voice cracked with pain. Why would you do this? The old lord looked at her with something that might have been regret. They have my family, he said. My daughter and her children, they promised to release them if I did this one thing. Alindra felt tears burning in her eyes. She had loved this old lord like an uncle, and he had tried to kill her. Marcus released Lord Valeth into the hands of the guards and stepped back to stand beside the princess. I am sorry, Your Highness, he said quietly. She looked up at him with those glowing, tear-filled eyes. You knew, she said. You knew before anyone else, I suspected. How? We have psychics and truth-seers and technology that can detect lies, and yet none of them saw what you saw. How did you know? Marcus was quiet for a moment. On my world, he said. We call it intuition. We learn to read people, their movements, their eyes, the small things they do without thinking. It is not magic, Your Highness. It is just experience. I have spent 30 years learning to see the predator hiding inside the sheep. Alindra reached out and took his hand, the one still scarred from the blade he had caught in the garden. I am glad my father chose you, she said. Marcus looked down, and her delicate glowing fingers wrapped around his rough dark ones. So am I, Your Highness, he said. So am I. That night the palace was full of whispers. The servants talked about the human who never slept. The guards talked about the human who had killed 12 assassins in the dark. The courtiers talked about the human who had seen treachery that their best psychics had missed, and in her chamber, Princess Alindra sat by her window and thought about the strange creature who had 3 times now placed himself between her and death. She was beginning to understand what her father had seen there was something different about the human, something the galaxy had not yet learned to fear, but they would learn. The Galactic Concord Summit was held once every 10 years on the neutral world of the Sara. Primate was a place where enemies became diplomats and old hatreds were set aside in the name of progress. Every major power in the galaxy sent their representatives for the Valorian sovereignty. Protocol demanded that the heir to the throne attend. Princess Alindra did not want to go. The Shirath will be there, she said to her father. After what happened with Lord Valeth, they know their agents have failed. They will be angry. All the more reason for you to attend. Her father replied, "We cannot show weakness, daughter. The hegemony must see that we are not afraid of them." Alindra looked at Marcus, who stood silent by the door. "What do you think, Commander?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I think the hegemony is planning something," he said. "But I also think your father is right. If you hide from them now, they will never stop hunting you. Sometimes the safest thing to do is walk straight into the danger with your eyes open." Alindra smiled sadly. "You sound like you have done this before, many times, Your Highness, and you are still alive." So far, they left for the Sara. Prime the next morning. The summit was held in a vast floating palace above the planet's purple clouds. Delegates from 100 worlds filled the halls, creatures of every shape and size, speaking in languages that clicked and sang and rumbled. Alindra moved through the crowds with grace and dignity, as she had been trained to do since childhood. Marcus moved beside her like a shadow, quiet and watchful, and never more than an arm's length away. He saw the Shireth delegation before they saw him. Queen Xyrexis was impossible to miss. She was enormous, twice the height of a human, with a body like a nightmare made of chitin and blades, her compound eyes covered half her face, and her mandibles were large enough to bite through steel. She moved through the crowd, and the other delegates parted before her like water before a ship. When she saw Alindra, she smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Little princess," she said in a voice like grinding stone, "how kind of you to attend. I was so hoping we might have a chance to speak." Alindra kept her face calm even as fear flickered in her chest. "Queen Xyrexis, your reputation precedes you, as does yours, little one. I hear you have been having trouble with assassins. How unfortunate. The galaxy can be such a dangerous place for someone so delicate." Marcus felt his hands curl into fists at his sides. The Queen's many eyes shifted to look at him. "And what is this?" she asked. "A pet? How charming. I have heard rumors that the Valorians had acquired a human. I did not believe it. Such an unremarkable species. Commander Cole is my protector," Alindra said, "and he is anything but unremarkable." The Queen laughed, a horrible sound like rocks being crushed. "We shall see. Little princess, we shall see." She moved away into the crowd, but her threat hung in the air like poison. The trap was sprung on the 3rd day of the summit. It began with accusations. Shirath diplomats claiming that Valorian spies had been caught in hegemony space. The accusations were false, but that did not matter. Within hours, the summit had descended into chaos. And then the warships arrived. They emerged from fold space like a swarm of metal insects, hundreds of Shirath vessels surrounding the Zara Prime and blocking any escape. Queen Xyrexis broadcast her demands to the entire station. "The Valorian princess will be surrendered to me immediately," she announced. "This is not a negotiation. She has committed crimes against the hegemony, and she will face justice. Any attempt to resist will result in the destruction of this station and everyone aboard." The other delegates panicked. Some tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. Some tried to fight, but the Shirath soldiers were already aboard, thousands of them pouring through the docking bays in their black armor. The The Lorian guards formed a circle around the princess, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. "We cannot win this," the guard captain said grimly. "Your Highness, perhaps if you surrender, they will spare the others." "No," Marcus said. Everyone turned to look at him. "She will not surrender," he continued, "and we will not let them take her. Captain, I need you to hold this position as long as you can. I will go ahead and clear a path to the emergency shuttles." The captain stared at him. "There are 500 Shirath soldiers between here and the shuttle bay." "I know. You are one human." "I know that too." Marcus turned to Alindra. "Stay with your guards." "Your Highness, I will come back for you." She grabbed his arm, her glowing eyes wide with fear. "Marcus, this is suicide." He smiled at her, that strange, warm human smile she had come to know so well. "Maybe," he said, "but I made you a promise. Remember? Humans keep their promises." He pulled free of her grip and walked toward the corridor that led to the shuttle bay. The Shirath soldiers saw him coming. There were 37 of them between him and the shuttle bay. They raised their weapons. Marcus did not stop walking. He walked straight toward them with his hands empty and his eyes calm. "Human." The Shirath commander chittered. "You will surrender or you will die." "You are probably right about one of those things," Marcus said. "But here is something you should know about my species. We are very hard to kill. We come from a world that tried to murder us every single day for 1,000,000 years. And we survived. We survived ice ages and plagues and predators and natural disasters that would have wiped out any other species in the galaxy. And you know why? Because we never give up. We never stop fighting. We never surrender." He smiled. That cold, terrible smile. "So you can try to kill me if you want. But I promise you this. I will take a lot of you with me." The Shirath commander hesitated. That hesitation was all Marcus needed. He moved to fight was not beautiful, was brutal and ugly and savage in a way that made the watching delegates sick. With horror, Marcus used everything around him as a weapon, broken furniture and fallen bodies and the corridor walls. Themselves he fought through wounds that would have killed other species. He kept moving when his left arm was shattered by a Shirath blade. He kept fighting when a plasma bolt burned through his side. He would not stop. He could not stop because somewhere behind him was a princess who was counting on him when it was over. Marcus stood alone in the corridor filled with the broken bodies of 37 Shirath soldiers. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. His left arm hung useless at his side. His vision was going dark at the edges, but he was still standing. The Valorian guards found him like that, swaying on his feet, surrounded by the dead, still blocking the path to the princess. "Is she safe?" he asked. "Yes, Commander. She is safe." "Good," he said. And then he fell, but even as he fell, even as darkness claimed him, there was a small smile on his bloody face. He had kept his promise. Marcus should have been dead, the Valorian doctors said, so the Shirath poison in his old wounds combined with his new injuries should have been enough to kill any creature in the galaxy, but Marcus Cole was not any creature. He woke up 3 days later in a medical bay with tubes in his arms and machines beeping around him. The first thing he saw was Princess Alindra, sitting beside his bed with her glowing hands folded. In her lap, she looked exhausted. She looked like she had been crying. She looked like she had not left his side since he fell. "Your Highness," he said, and his voice was rough like gravel. "You should not be here. It is not safe." Alindra laughed, a sound that was half sob and half joy. "The entire station is on lockdown. There are 1,000 guards between me and the Shirath, and you are worried about my safety while you lie there half dead. It is my job to worry. Your job is to protect me, not to sacrifice yourself. Sometimes those are the same thing." She reached out and took his hand, her slender glowing fingers wrapping around his bandaged ones. "Do not ever do that again," she whispered. "Do you understand me, Marcus Cole? I order you as your princess. Do not ever leave me like that again. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. I will do my best. Your Highness. It was not a promise, and they both knew it, but it was all he could offer. The situation on the station was tense. The Shirath warships still surrounded the Sara. Prime Queen Zaraxis still demanded the Princess be surrendered. Negotiations had begun, but they were going nowhere. The delegates were growing desperate. Some of them were beginning to suggest that perhaps handing over one princess was a small price to pay for peace, but the Valorian delegation refused, and to everyone's surprise, they were not a lone species that had never shown any interest in Valorian affairs were suddenly speaking in defense of the princess. They had seen what happened in the corridor. They had seen one human stand against an army, and something about that act of impossible courage had changed the way they looked at this conflict. The human has made this personal, one delegate muttered. If we surrender the princess now, we are saying that what he did meant nothing, that sacrifice meant nothing. And that is not something I am willing to say on the fifth day. Queen Zyraxis demanded a personal audience with the Valorian delegation. It was a trap. Everyone knew it was a trap, but refusing would be seen as weakness, and so Princess Alindra agreed to meet with the Queen face to face. Marcus was told to stay in the medical bay. He was told that he was too injured to stand. He was told that there would be guards and that the princess would be protected. He ignored all of it when Alindra walked into the negotiation chamber. Marcus walked beside her. He was held together by bandages and pain medication and what the Valorian doctors called impossible human stubbornness. He could barely stand, but he would not let her face the queen alone. Queen Zaraxis filled the chamber with her massive form. Her compound eyes swept over the assembled delegates and fixed on the princess with naked hunger. Then her gaze shifted to the small, broken human standing at Alindra's side. So, the queen said in that voice like grinding stone, "This is the creature that slaughtered my warriors. This is the beast that killed 37 of my finest soldiers with his bare hands. I must admit, I did not believe the reports. I thought surely there must have been some mistake." She leaned closer, her mandibles clicking. "But looking at you now, little human, I am beginning to understand. There is something in your eyes, something I have not seen in a very long time. What are you, truly? What manner of creature looks at death and refuses to fall?" Marcus said nothing. He simply met her gaze without blinking. The queen's eyes narrowed. "I have conquered 100 worlds," she said. "I have broken empires and crushed civilizations. I have killed creatures that thought themselves gods. And yet you insignificant speck, you do not fear me. Why?" "Because fear is useless," Marcus said quietly. "I have been afraid before, Your Majesty. I have been so afraid that I could not move or think. But I learned something a long time ago. Fear does not keep you alive. Action keeps you alive. So I stopped letting fear make my choices for me." The queen stared at him for a long moment. Then, she turned her attention back to Alindra. "Tell me, little princess," she said, "what manner of beast guards you so fiercely? I have conquered species that spread across star systems. I have broken empires that lasted 10,000 years. Yet this creature, this small soft thing from a world I had never heard of, he defies me. He kills my soldiers. He refuses to die when any reasonable being would have surrendered. What is he?" Alindra felt something rise up inside her chest. It was not fear, it was pride. Fierce and burning and unstoppable, she lifted her chin and met the queen's compound eyes without flinching. "My human protector," she said, and her voice rang through the chamber clear and strong. Murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Queen Zyraxis's mandibles clicked in what might have been surprise. "One human," she hissed. You place your faith in one human? Alindra did not look away. One is all I need. The Priet. Silence that followed was heavy with tension. The queen's eyes moved back and forth. Between the glowing princess and the broken human beside her, she was calculating, weighing options and outcomes and possibilities, and somewhere in those alien eyes, Marcus saw something he had not expected to see. Doubt. The queen was not afraid yet, but she was uncertain. For a creature like Zyraxis, uncertainty was almost worse than fear. This is not over, the queen said, finally. The hegemony does not forget. We do not forgive. And we do not lose. Neither do we, Marcus said. Quietly, the queen looked at him one last time. Then, she turned and swept out of the chamber, with her guards following behind her when she was gone. Alindra let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. That was terrifying. She whispered. Marcus swayed on his feet. Yes, he agreed. But you did well, Your Highness. You did not show fear. I learned from watching you. She put her arm around him to steady him as his strength finally gave out. Come, she said gently. Let us get you back to the medical bay before you fall down again. I was not going to fall. You were absolutely going to fall. For the first time since the crisis began. Marcus laughed. It hurt his broken ribs, but he did not care. He had stood beside his princess in the face of a monster, and they had both survived. For now, that was enough. The standoff continued for 2 more days, Queen. Zyraxis sent demands every hour. The Valorian delegation refused every time. The other delegates grew more and more nervous as the Sharath warships tightened their blockade around the Sar Prime, and then everything changed. It started with a single blip on the station sensors. Then another, then 100, then 1,000 ships were emerging from fold space, more ships than anyone on the station had ever seen, gathered in one place for a terrible moment. Everyone assumed they were Sharath reinforcements. Then the identification signals came through. They were human. The United Earth Defense Force had arrived. Admiral Chun's face appeared on every screen in the station. A stern woman with gray hair and cold eyes that had seen 100 battlefields. This is Admiral Chun of the United Earth Defense Force, she announced. We are aware of the situation on the Sar Prime. We are aware that a citizen of Earth, Commander Marcus Cole, is being threatened by the Sharath hegemony. This is unacceptable. Queen Zyraxis appeared on the screen, her mandibles clicking with rage. Human, you have no authority here. This is a matter between the hegemony and the Valorian sovereignty. Withdraw your ships or face destruction. Admiral Chun's expression did not change. With respect, Your Majesty, I do not think you understand the situation. You have threatened one of our people. You have tried to kill him. You have blockaded a station where he is recovering from wounds he received while protecting an innocent person. This is not something we are willing to overlook. One human, the Queen snarled. You would risk war for one human? We would risk war for any human, Admiral Chun replied. That is who we are, Your Majesty. We do not abandon our own, not ever, not for any reason. So here are your options. You can withdraw your forces immediately, and we can all pretend this never happened. Or you can stay here and find out exactly what the human species is capable of when we are angry. She leaned forward, and something cold and terrible flickered in her eyes. I should warn you, Your Majesty, we are very good at being angry. The communication channel fell silent in the negotiation chamber. The delegates watched the sensor displays with wide eyes. The human fleet was not just large. It was impossibly, unbelievably large. There were carriers and battleships and destroyers, and frigates stretching across the display. Like a metal ocean, and more were arriving every minute. How? One of the Morvathi delegates whispered, how did they mobilize so quickly? Their homeworld is halfway across the galaxy. They were already coming, another delegate realized. They must have started moving the moment they heard what happened. Days ago, before the blockade was even established. But why? Why would they commit so many resources for one soldier? Princess Alindra looked at Marcus, who was watching the display with an unreadable expression. Because he is one of them, she said softly. And humans protect their own on the screen. They could see the Sharath fleet. Beginning to shift, Queen Zaraxis was recalculating her. Ships still outnumbered the humans significantly, but her intelligence. Reports were screaming warnings at her. These humans had killed 37 of her elite soldiers with one wounded man. What would they do with 10,000 warships? The queen thought about the human soldier who had stood before her without fear. She thought about the look in his eyes, that quiet certainty, that absolute refusal to surrender. She thought about what Admiral Chun had said. We are very good at being angry for the first time in her very long life. Queen Zyraxis felt something she did not recognize. It was cold and sharp, and it sat in her chest like a blade. It took her a moment to identify it. Fear. She was afraid. She was afraid of these small, soft creatures from their violent little world. She was afraid of what they might do if she pushed them further. She was afraid because she finally understood what the High Sovereign of Valoria had understood long ago. Humans were not weak. They were not fragile. They were not ordinary. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were survivors. They were protectors, and they were absolutely terrifying when someone threatened the people they loved. All ships, Queen Zyraxis said slowly, fall back to hegemony space. We are withdrawing. Your Majesty? Her commander asked, confused. You heard me. We are leaving. This fight is not worth the cost. She turned off the communication channel and sat in the darkness of her command chamber. She had lost today, but she was patient. She could wait, and in the meantime, she would learn everything there was to know about the humans. Clearly, the galaxy had underestimated them. She would not make that mistake again months later. Princess Alindra stood in the gardens of the Valorian Palace watching the twin moons rise over the crystal towers. Marcus stood beside her as he always did, quiet and watchful, and never more than an arm's length away. His wounds had healed. Though the scars remained, the galaxy had changed since the Sar Prime species that had never noticed humans before were suddenly very interested in learning about them. Diplomats came to Earth asking questions. Scientists came to study their strange biology. Warriors came to test themselves against human soldiers, and everywhere the story spread. The story of one human who had stood alone against an army to protect an alien princess he barely knew. They call you Deathworlders now, Alindra said softly. They say your planet is so hostile that simply surviving there turns you into weapons. Marcus smiled. We prefer to think of ourselves as persistent. Persistent, she repeated, and there was warmth in her voice. Yes, I suppose that is one word for it. She turned to face him, and in her ancient star-bright eyes there was something new, something gentle, something that made Marcus's heart beat faster in his chest. My father asked me today if I wanted a different guardian, she said. Now that the hegemony has retreated, now that the immediate danger has passed, he said I could choose anyone in the galaxy. Marcus felt something twist in his stomach. And what did you tell him? Alindra reached out and took his hand, her slender glowing fingers wrapping around his scarred dark ones. I told him I already have the only guardian I will ever need. Marcus looked down. Their joined hands. He thought about all the battles he had fought, all it isn't been the wounds he had suffered, all the times he had almost died protecting this fragile, beautiful, impossible princess. Your Highness, he said slowly, I am just one human. I am old and scarred, and I will not live as long as your kind." "Are you sure?" "I am sure," she interrupted. "I am more sure of you than I have ever been of anything in my very long life." She stepped closer to him, her light-filled skin warming the cool evening air. "You asked me once why my father chose you," she said. "I think I finally understand the answer." "And what is the answer?" "He chose you because you would die for me without hesitation. But more than that, you would live for me. You would stand beside me day after day, year after year. For as long as your human heart keeps beating, you would protect me, not because it is your duty, but because you want to, because somewhere along the way, you started to care." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "You are right," he said finally. "I do care. More than I should. More than is probably wise. Wisdom is overrated," Alendra said. And there was laughter in her voice. She leaned up and pressed her glowing lips to his scarred cheek. It was brief and gentle, and it left him breathless. "Come," she said, taking his hand and leading him back toward the palace. "The night is beautiful, and we have so much time ahead of us." Marcus followed her through the crystal gardens with the stars wheeling overhead and somewhere out in the darkness of space. The galaxy watched and wondered about the strange new species that had suddenly appeared among them, the humans, the Deathworlders, ones who would not give up, the ones who would not stop fighting, the ones who would burn down the universe itself to protect the people. They loved the galaxy was not ready for them, but ready or not, the humans were here, and they were not going anywhere.